I want to show you something my mother-in-law Opal taught me years ago. She was born in 1939. She grew up watching her mother stretch every ingredient they had to its absolute limit, and she never, not once in her 87 years, threw away a spice because it expired. She also never once bought a seasoning packet. I remember the first time I asked her why. We were standing in my kitchen. I had a bottle of garlic powder, and she looked at the label like it had offended her personally. She turned it over, read every word on the back, set it down on the counter, and said, "Sue Ellen, there are 5 words on here that have nothing to do with garlic." She was right, and that conversation changed how I stocked my kitchen. Today I'm going to walk you through what I know about what is actually inside commercial spice bottles. Not opinion, not scare tactics. Documented factual information from the FDA, the FTC, and from food fraud investigations that have been published across the European Union and the United States. Then I'm going to show you how to make your own blends at home, the real recipes, the real ratios, and the real math on what you save. Before we go further, if you cook from scratch and you want to know exactly what goes into your food, hit subscribe. I put out real information for people who want real answers. Now let's talk about spices. The first thing you need to understand is how the FDA defines the word spice on a label. Under 21 CFR 101.22, the FDA allows manufacturers to use the term spice as a collective term. That means a company can list spice on an ingredient panel without ever telling you which spices they used or in what quantities. That collective umbrella covers everything from pepper to paprika to fenugreek, all hidden behind one word. This matters because it opens the door to substitution. If you buy a bottle labeled Italian seasoning and the ingredients say spice, salt, and silicon dioxide, you have no legal guarantee about what specific plants went into it. The manufacturer is protected. You are not. Now let's talk about those extra ingredients that have nothing to do with flavoring. Silicon dioxide is listed as an anti-caking agent. It is a form of sand. Its job is to keep powdered spices from clumping in the bottle. The FDA has approved it as generally recognized as safe at certain levels, but it adds weight to the product without adding any nutritional or flavor value. Calcium silicate serves the same function. It is another anti-caking agent approved for use in spices. Again, safe at regulatory limits, but it is not a spice. It is a filler that extends the bulk of the product. Tricalcium phosphate is another one. You will see it listed in garlic powder, onion powder, and many blended seasonings. It is used as a flow agent. When you pour the spice, it flows smoothly because of this additive, not because of the quality of the spice itself. These ingredients are not secrets. They are disclosed on labels, but most people do not read spice labels the way they read food labels, and the companies know that. Now let's talk about the bottle itself. The FTC has regulations around something called slack fill. Slack fill is the empty space inside a package that does not serve a functional purpose. Non-functional slack fill, meaning airspace that isn't there to protect the product or allow for settling, is considered a deceptive practice under federal law. The spice industry has historically operated in a gray area of this regulation. Consumer research and published product analyses have found that many commercial spice jars are between 30 and 50% empty by volume. You open a jar and the spice fills maybe half of what you're looking at. Some of this is attributed to products settling during shipping, but a 2019 investigation by a consumer advocacy group measured dozens of common spice brands and found that the empty space was consistent even in products that had not been shipped long distances. The containers were simply designed to appear larger than the contents required. When you factor that into the price you paid per ounce, the number changes significantly. Let me give you an example. A name brand jar of chili powder might weigh 2.5 ounces and cost $4.99. That is just under $2 per ounce. At wholesale, pure dried ancho chilies cost roughly 40 cents per ounce. Cumin seed, dried and ground at home, runs about 30 cents per ounce. The remaining components, garlic, oregano, cayenne, run similar numbers. When you blend your own chili powder using whole or ground single ingredient spices, you can produce a full batch for roughly 35 to 45 cents per ounce. That is less than a quarter of the commercial price, and you know exactly what is in it. But the cost math is only part of the picture. The deeper issue is adulteration. The global spice trade is one of the most fraud-prone segments of the food supply. This is not speculation. The FDA has issued documented recalls and import alerts specifically tied to adulteration in spices. The most well-documented case involves turmeric. Lead chromate is a bright yellow industrial pigment. It has been used by unscrupulous suppliers to enhance the color of turmeric powder and make it appear more vibrant and higher quality. Lead chromate is toxic. The FDA has flagged this adulterant in multiple import alerts going back to 2013, with additional documented cases in 2016 and 2019. Consumer Reports published an investigation into lead in spices in 2023 that found elevated lead levels in numerous nationally available turmeric products. This is not a fringe problem. This is a documented pattern in a global supply chain where verification is difficult and financial incentive exists to cut corners. Paprika has its own fraud problem. Sudan Red is an industrial dye used in shoe polish and floor wax. It is not approved for food use anywhere in the world. It has been found repeatedly in paprika imported into the European Union and in separate investigations in products that made it onto U.S. store shelves. The EU has maintained an active early warning alert system for Sudan dyes in spices since 2005. The problem has never fully gone away. Fenugreek has been labeled and sold as other spices, including fennel and cumin, in documented cases of economically motivated adulteration. When a commodity spice is more expensive, suppliers under financial pressure sometimes substitute cheaper alternatives and hope testing catches up slowly. The FDA's Spice and Seasonings Adulteration Report, published in 2013, found that approximately 12% of the imported spice samples they tested were adulterated or filthy, meaning they contained contamination from insects, rodent material, or foreign matter. 12%. That is not a rounding error. Opal used to say something that I think is the clearest statement of principle I have ever heard about food. She would say, if you can't identify every ingredient, you don't need it. Not, you should be careful about it, or you might want to research it. You don't need it. Because the alternative, making it yourself with ingredients you can hold in your hand and name, exists. It has always existed. Let me show you exactly how I do that. The first blend I want to walk through is chili powder. Real homemade chili powder is nothing like what you get in a commercial bottle. The foundation is ancho chili, that is dried poblano, which gives you a deep, fruity, slightly smoky base without excessive heat. I use 2 parts ancho by weight. To that I add 1 part cumin, which gives the warmth and earthiness that makes chili taste like chili. Then half a part dried garlic powder, 1/4 part dried oregano, Mexican oregano if you can find it, which has a more citrusy character than Mediterranean oregano, and an 1/8 part cayenne for controlled heat. That ratio is 2:1 to 1/2 to 1/4 to 1/8. Write it down. It scales easily. When you grind your own dried anchos in a spice grinder or a cleaned out coffee grinder, the smell is incomparable to anything in a bottle. That is because you are grinding the actual cellular structure of the chili, not a powder that was processed months ago in a facility across the world. The second blend is Italian seasoning. Commercial Italian seasoning is typically a combination of dried basil, oregano, rosemary, thyme, and sometimes marjoram or sage. The ratio I use is 2 parts basil, 2 parts oregano, 1 part thyme, 1 part rosemary. Rosemary should be ground slightly finer since the leaves are harder, and 1 part marjoram. That is it. 5 ingredients that you can identify with your eyes closed and your nose. No silicon dioxide, no calcium silicate, no flow agents. I buy these herbs in bulk from a single spice supplier I have used for years, or I grow basil and oregano myself in the summer and dry them. The difference in flavor is not subtle. When you rub fresh dried oregano between your fingers and smell it, you understand immediately why the ancient world treated spices like currency. The third blend is taco seasoning. This one is important because the packet versions are loaded with salt and often contain maltodextrin as a bulking agent. Maltodextrin is a processed carbohydrate derived from cornstarch. It has a higher glycemic index than table sugar. There is no culinary reason to put it in taco seasoning. The manufacturers use it because it is cheap and it adds bulk and weight to a small seasoning packet. My taco seasoning: 1 tablespoon chili powder, your homemade blend, 1½ teaspoons cumin, 1 teaspoon garlic powder, 1 teaspoon onion powder, ½ a teaspoon paprika, ½ a teaspoon salt, ¼ teaspoon black pepper, ¼ teaspoon oregano, and a pinch of cayenne. That seasons 1 pound of meat the same way a commercial packet does. The cost difference per batch is roughly 85 cents versus $1.89 at most grocery stores, and that calculation doesn't account for the salt reduction and the elimination of maltodextrin and anti-caking agents. The fourth blend I want to give you is Everything Bagel Seasoning. This one got very popular a few years ago and immediately became one of the most marked up products in the spice aisle. The commercial versions are sold in small jars for $4 to $6. The ingredients are sesame seeds, dried garlic, dried onion, poppy seeds, and salt. That is it. There is no technique here. It is seeds and dried aromatics. I buy each component in bulk. 1 cup of sesame seeds, ½ a cup of poppy seeds, 3 tablespoons of dried garlic flakes, 3 tablespoons of dried onion flakes, 2 tablespoons of coarse salt. Mix it. Done. The cost for a full jar made from bulk ingredients is under 80 cents. The commercial version contains the same ingredients, but at a fraction of the quantity for 4 times the price. And some brands add silicon dioxide to prevent clumping. Now I want to come back to the economic math because I think the numbers are worth sitting with. If your household uses 10 spice blends regularly, chili powder, taco seasoning, Italian seasoning, garlic salt, onion powder, lemon pepper, everything bagel, Cajun seasoning, ranch powder, and a general all-purpose blend, and you replace each commercial purchase with a homemade version using bulk single-ingredient spices, the average household saves between $80 and $120 per year. That is not a large number in isolation, but that is a number you produce without changing your cooking habits at all. You are making the same food for the same meals with the same flavors. You just stop paying for air, anti-caking agents, and supply chain fraud risk. Opal never framed food as a financial issue. She framed it as a knowledge issue. The store wants you to keep buying, she used to say. I want you to stop needing. Those are 2 completely different orientations toward the kitchen. One treats you as a customer. The other treats you as someone who knows what you're doing. The spice industry has grown increasingly concentrated over the last 20 years. A small number of large companies control a significant portion of the retail spice market. That consolidation has not improved quality. What it has done is create longer supply chains, more intermediaries, more opportunities for adulteration before the product reaches a testing facility, and more pressure to cut costs at every step. When you buy single ingredient spices from a reputable bulk supplier, or better, when you grow and dry your own, you shorten that chain. You eliminate most of those intermediary steps. You can smell, taste, and visually verify what you have. You are not dependent on a government testing system that samples approximately 2% of imported food shipments. I am not suggesting the entire commercial spice industry is fraudulent. Most of what you buy at the grocery store is safe, but safe and what it claims to be at the price it charges are not the same standard. And for the fraction of products that do contain undisclosed lead, Sudan dye, or substitute ingredients, those are products that pass through a system that was not designed with your specific interest as the top priority. Your kitchen was. There is a practical side to making your own blends that I want to acknowledge, because the main pushback I hear is about time, and I understand that. Not everyone has the same margin in their day. Here is my answer. Making a batch of taco seasoning takes 4 minutes. You measure 5 ingredients into a jar and shake it. Making a batch of Italian seasoning takes 3 minutes. You combine 5 herbs and label the jar. Everything bagel seasoning is a 2-minute task. You do not make these blends every week. You make them once every 6 to 8 weeks in larger quantities. The time investment is 2 to 3 hours per year total to fully replace every commercial spice blend in your cabinet. I have been doing this for 11 years. My spice cabinet is 11 jars, all labeled, all made from ingredients I can name. I have not bought a commercial spice blend since 2015. I will also say this. When you make your own blends, you can adjust them. If your family doesn't like the heat level in the taco seasoning, you reduce the cayenne. If you want more garlic in the Italian blend, you add it. Commercial products are formulated for the broadest possible taste profile, which means they are optimized for no one specifically. Your blend is optimized for your table. Opal used to adjust her seasoning blends every year based on what grew well in her garden. Some years the oregano came in strong and she'd use more of it. Some years the basil was mild and she'd compensate with more thyme. She thought of her spice cabinet as a living system, not a collection of identical jars that never changed. That is a different relationship with food than what the grocery store offers. If you want to start somewhere today, start with taco seasoning. It is the highest markup commercial blend relative to its actual ingredients. Make 1 batch this week. Use it exactly as you would the packet. Notice whether the food tastes different. It will. Notice the smell when you combine the cumin and chili powder. It hits differently when neither of them have anti-caking agents dulling the volatile oils. Then try the Italian seasoning. Then the chili powder. 3 months from now, look at your spice cabinet and count the commercial products you have not replaced. I think you will find the number is close to 0, not because I told you to replace them, but because you will have learned, through your own hands, that you do not need them. If this kind of content is useful to you, real information, real recipes, no fluff, subscribe to this channel. I post every week. There are no sponsored products in my kitchen. No company pays me to tell you what to buy. I tell you what I use and why, and I let you make your own decisions. Opal is 87 years old. She still cooks from scratch every day she is able to. She still reads every label. She still puts down any jar that has more words than it needs. She says the grocery store is a tool, not a teacher. She learned to cook before there was a grocery store within 20 miles of her home, and she cooked better food than most people I know because of it. You do not have to live like that to take one lesson from it. The lesson is simple. Know your ingredients. Make your blends. Keep the supply chain short. The store wants you to keep buying. You don't have to. I want to leave you with one more thing before I go. A lot of people ask me whether organic spices solve the adulteration problem. The honest answer is, partially. Certified organic spices are required to be free of synthetic pesticides, and must meet USDA organic handling standards. But organic certification does not specifically protect against heavy metal contamination from environmental soil sources, and it does not prevent economically motivated adulteration in the supply chain before certification occurs. The 2023 Consumer Reports investigation found elevated lead in some products labeled organic. The USDA organic seal means something. It does not mean everything. The best protection is still sourcing single ingredient spices from suppliers who provide third-party testing documentation, or growing and drying your own when possible. Dried herbs are far easier to grow than most people expect. Oregano, thyme, basil, rosemary, and sage all grow in containers on a patio or windowsill. You harvest them in summer, hang them to dry in a well-ventilated space, crumble them into jars, and you have herbs that are fresher and more potent than anything you will find on a grocery store shelf. The volatile oils that give herbs their flavor begin to degrade the moment the plant is cut. The faster you get from harvest to jar, the more flavor you preserve. Commercial spices, by the time they reach your cabinet, may have been in transit or storage for 12 to 18 months. That is not a scandal. It is logistics. But it is another reason why homemade blends from fresher individual components taste noticeably better. Opal keeps a small herb garden in pots on her porch. Even at 87, she says she will stop when her hands stop working, and not a day before. She grows 3 kinds of mint, 2 kinds of oregano, thyme, and sage. She dries them on a screen in her back room every August. She has done this every single year I have known her. She does not do it to save money at this point in her life. She does it because she knows exactly what is in her food. That knowledge, she has told me, is something no one can take from you once you have it. I think she is right about that. That is everything for today.